One of the most popular sports in our house was being offended. I'm not kidding. My mother either invented or perfected the term standing on ceremony. Here's what I mean. One winter, many years after I moved to California, I think this was in the early 90s, my parents called from Long Island to tell me there's been a big storm and power outage and they have no heat. They're sitting in the kitchen, my father in a ski parka, my mother in a full-length mink coat. They have no idea when the power will be restored. I asked my mother if my aunt and uncle, who live a little further out on the island, have power, and my mother says, yes, they do. I suggest that perhaps my parents might want to stay with them. My mother says, we talked to them. I ask, did they invite you to stay with them? My mother says, yes, they did, but they didn't insist. My mother denies this story to this day, but it is totally true. Who could make that up? And so my parents remained in the kitchen for many more hours. My mother kept warm by her mink and her pride. So these personal memories, which we all have, and which Erma mined to perfection, are the germs of what makes us the writers we are. You can script a perfect Modern Families episode, but it's still Modern Family, not your family. We need to remember the experiences that make us unique and use them as fuel for what goes down on the page, which is not to say that everything that happens to us is worth writing about. That's true. As an exercise, it's fine, but you got to be able to edit. And part of our job is to be able to do that and identify what are the gems hiding in the mounds of data we all collect. And we've got to constantly keep our eyes and ears open for the oddities of life that cross our paths. Now, luckily, I always seem to be a magnet for this stuff. Wherever I go, weird people come up to me, and I don't know why. Back when I was running TV shows, I joined a gym for a few years, never realizing that the retired professional wrestler with a beard dyed 3 different colors would wind up a character in my first novel, Elevating Overman. But he was there. I had collected him in my unconscious. For years, I spent every Christmas with my in-laws in Phoenix, clueless that that city would become the setting and linchpin of my second novel, Cascade Falls. I had no idea that I would one day ditch sitcom for writing novels, but paying attention to my surroundings and all of these characters gave me a lot to work with and ultimately saved my butt because I had a lot to write about. The book gets published, and it marks the beginning of a whole new set of things career-wise. Instead of being locked in a sitcom room or in my own office, I was now traveling around the country on a book tour, talking about Overman, midlife awakenings, overcoming grief, things that mattered to me. It was a fantastic experience, and as any author on a book tour will tell you, a sobering one. Unlike the crowds at comedy clubs, you don't get many happy drunks at the Jewish Community Center in Denver. You might get a heckler or two, but that would mean that at least they're paying attention, which isn't always the case. One night, I'm speaking at a synagogue in Boca Raton, nice size audience of about 75, demographic 80 to 120. I'm roughly 4 minutes into my speech, and I start hearing the snoring. I look around, and I just keep going on. You just got to power through it, you know. Afterward, the event's over, and the event arranger, this guy Steve, comes up to me. He says, "Bruce, you were fantastic." I said, "What are you talking about, Steve?" At least 10 people were sound asleep. He said, that happens at every event at this synagogue. When they asked the rabbi how big the sanctuary is, he says it sleeps 600. So, you know, and that put it all in perspective. I had to laugh and store that in my little file for the future.